we're talking 2.5 decades of extra life. The argument that you hear all the time is, why live 10 years longer? It's only the years at the nursing home. Why would you want more of that? But that is not so. I've studied the last 10 years probably compared to like 3 medical schools. I've read like 500 books. If you can live more like the circumstances throughout evolutionary times, you will be more healthy. Once you start understanding the power of the watches and rings, there's no way back. It's like we're all now pioneers into a new continent, because suddenly we as doctors are used to just taking the blood pressure when the patient is there, taking the blood sugar when it's there. But now suddenly millions of people have devices that they can see their system in real time. So we're discovering so much that is not really known. So we are kind of the first pioneers going into a new continent, and that continent is us, our own function, our own immune system, and our own nervous system.
Welcome to the show, Dr. Torkil.
Thank you, Anniken. Very nice to be here, and this time in English. Great.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you here. And we have recorded some episodes before in Norwegian. This is our first in English for our English audience. And Dr. Torkil, you are a best-selling author, not only in Norway, but all over the world right now.
Yeah, at least the book, The Pulse Cure, is out in 8 different languages. So it's all around the world. And it's a new concept for many people, how to use the heart rate and heart rate monitors and heart rate variability to be able to regulate your stress levels and your overall function. So it's an exciting journey to be in the forefront of this journey, because the Pulse Cure is still the only book, to my knowledge, that combines the knowledge of how to use the pulse rate monitors combined with lifestyle strategies. So if somebody knows another book, please let me know, because I'd love to read it.
Same here. So your book actually changed my life, and it has had such a huge impact on how I plan my life, what I actually do during the day, and it has helped me really improve my energy levels and performance. So I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, it's changed my life too. So heart rate variability is a variation between heartbeats, and this is what can show which state in the autonomic nervous system you are in. So the autonomic nervous system is the base of our nervous system, what we share with all vertebrates and mammals, from hundreds of millions of years back, since we parted from them evolutionary sense. So when we are in this parasympathetic restful state, the state where the recovery happens, where the immune system performs at its best, that's the parasympathetic restful state, the rest and digest state. When you're in that state, when you breathe in and you fill your lungs with oxygen, the heart rate goes up a little bit to take advantage of the oxygen. When you breathe out and there's less oxygen in the lungs, it slows down just a little bit, measured in milliseconds, uh, which the wearables can detect. When you're in the stressful state, for whatever reason, whether it's mental stress, whether you have been eating something you cannot tolerate, been drinking alcohol, been using nicotine, and lots of other factors, being in the week before menstruation for women, for example, being sick. If you're in the sympathetic state for some of these reasons, then your heart will beat at a very steady pace. It's like your organism thinks that, okay, this organism is in danger. We have to use all available forces, even if he's breathing out and there's less oxygen in the lungs. And so there's a sliding scale from fully parasympathetic mode until the fully sympathetic mode. And while you are living your life, having your attention wherever you want to, these wearables will keep track of the intensity of your stress balance and give you an answer, combine it with the knowledge of millions of other people, and then give you the estimate from the wearable about what is happening in your life. Of course, the wearable does not know what's really going on. It can just use movement, temperature, and heart rate to guess what is going on and give you an answer. When you get the feedback from your body through the heart rate, you can, just like we want to do, we want to follow our hearts, in the, how to say, by doing what we want to fulfill our dreams. But to achieve that, we also have to follow our hearts in a very literal way. We have to listen to what the heart can tell us from the intensity of our lives, because if our lives becomes too intensive, too productive, it's not sustainable in the long run. So we have to be good at rest. We have to be able to identify the energy thieves that just saps us of our energy without giving anything in return. And we can talk about this, what these factors would be. But once we can use our heart rate to be able to find and identify these energy thieves, we have more energy to spend on what brings us forward by following our heart in the traditional sense.
Oh yeah, and it's so important and so interesting. And yeah, let's talk a little bit more about like how we use those devices and heart rate variability. What is it really, and how does it affect us? And I think it's interesting that you say that, we can't be productive all the time, because in our society we're switched on most of the time, right? And for high performers like yourself and me, where we like to get stuff done, and we have goals and dreams, and we follow our heart, like you say. And that can easily be a trap, because we're just doing and doing and doing stuff, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah. So we need, and the most productive time actually is when you have enough downtime in the down state and you're calm. You're just watching the sea, just like we see on your pictures from California. So this calm, silent time is when your brain goes into the default mode network. It combines memories, it combines plans for the future, it combines your knowledge, and that is when you find your best ideas. So the best performers, regardless of category, they are the ones that are best at rest, and they are the best at reaching this creative state. So if you're just in the performance executive mode all the time, you're not accessing this state. So this is where our brains is playing with us. And it's very important to have enough downtime. So the downtime is not in the way of performance, but it is the way to performance. So that is very important, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It is a true performance enhancer. And I find whenever there's like a challenge in my business, or I'm developing something, or I need clarity, I have to take a time out. So all the ideas come when I go for a walk or I meditate. And really, when we're switched on, we're in like high beta brainwaves, and we don't have access to our unconscious mind. And everything we have learned and been through is stored in our unconscious mind. And in order to be creative, we need to access that. And when we're accessing the conscious part of our brain, we're using like 5% of the brain, and the rest of the 95%, all the resources is stored in the unconscious brain. And the only way to tap into that is, like you say, to switch off and go inward and relax, really.
Mhm. Yeah. And it can be hard to do nothing. So to access this mode, you need to do something very routinely. You have to maybe do walk, you have to do housework, you have to do a very small activity that doesn't take any brain capacity, some routine work, and then your brain quickly access this mode. So this is why walking is perfect for it. Uh, Being totally still, we're not made for that. We are made to be vigilant, to look for solutions, to look for threats. So to do nothing is really not what we are made for. So you should find one activity like walking, like just watching the ocean. That is when your ideas come.
I love that you say that. And I think a lot of the people watching this will be like, oh, thank you so much for telling me that I'm not made to sit still and do nothing. Because yeah, as you say, our brains are switched on, is looking for dangers. We want to do stuff. And then I also find it really good to use techniques which are like active relaxation, going for a walk, or it can be doing a yoga nidra or something like that. just switching off and doing nothing is really difficult for us, really. So thank you for pointing out that. I think a lot of people will find relief in knowing that they're normal. It's normal to feel that it's difficult to do nothing, because like, what is really doing nothing? It's the
Yeah, and actually, there's research, where they have tried to put people in a room, like a naked room. There's nothing there, nothing to do, but they have the choice to give themselves electrical shocks that is painful. So before they start the research, the participants would say that they would pay to avoid these electrical shocks. It's so painful. But sitting alone there for like 15 minutes or more, uh, just in their own company, that leads to them giving themselves electrical shocks because it's so painful just to be in your own company for so many people. So that's interesting research. And you also say that it's good for so many people to be allowed to rest and allowed to have this downtime because they often feel guilty by not being productive. Um, so um, so maybe there's a tradition for many people to think that, well, I have to do something all the time, and if you just lay on the couch or don't do anything productive, they feel guilty. So this is kind of a license to rest, a license to have this downtime that is so essential for performance.
Oh, I love that you say that. And I think a lot of people can relate to feeling guilty when they're not productive. And having that downtime is one of the most productive things we can do. And you are, everything you do is geared towards how can I do more with less input and still have, energy to do all the things I want to do. And so using a device to measure your heart rate variability is, I think it's key. I mean, if you can't measure it, if you don't have the numbers, how on earth are you going to know how your body's doing, if you actually have energy or if you're just running on adrenaline or whatever? So the concept of rest, like we're speaking of now, is like, yeah, you can take time out to really relax your body, and using a variable device will give you that feedback. And also, what is really interesting, what we've spoken about before, Torkil, is yeah, we can take time out and relax. If you go for a walk or take a nap, obviously that is relaxing, and people can relate to that and understand that. And what was really interesting when I read the Pulse Cure, and I know that was interesting for you as well, when you started to wear the devices and get the feedback on what other things actually cause stress on your body. So, what were your biggest surprises when you started to measure your stress levels?
Yes, I got a lot of surprises. And first, we may have to say that, okay, these variables, they track heart rate variability. It's like the Whoop band that I have on my right wrist, the Garmin watch on my left, or the Aura ring, and many other devices that will tell you your stress balance. Because if you don't know where your stress balance is, it's hard to navigate. So that's the main thing. But once you start using those, you can see that the opponents for rest comes from surprising places. That would be like alcohol. That's the worst one. That could be food that you cannot tolerate. Often that would be ultra processed food, but it can be other ingredients as well. You understand that fasting is calming your system, even though you would think it would stress you. You would find that cold is calming for your system, even though you think it would stress you, and so on. So there are a lot of physiological stressors that we were not aware of. It could be being in the altitudes, going from lowland to the high altitudes, particularly if you're in the Rocky Mountains, and so it can be quite a huge stressors, which is, of course, why athletes used to go to the altitudes to train to become stronger. So those are some of the surprises I've gotten, I would say.
Oh, wow. And I'm curious, how has your relationship to alcohol changed after you started to measure your stress levels?
Yes, it has changed from a daily activity to hardly existent. So I used to be one, and I think that still a lot of doctors recommend 2 glasses of wine for men and one for women. And it was recommended for all those years. And I used to take that as a great advice. I loved to have a couple of glasses of wine and feel the mellow feeling and calm. But once you start tracking your system, you can see that after the alcohol effect is gone, then you have another effect, which is from acetaldehyde and methanol, actually, which will create a lot of stress in your body. But you're sleeping, so you're not really aware of it. So once you start tracking, you see that the nights with alcohol is the worst nights. And I used to drink, as I said, 2 glasses of wine every day. My wife says three, and that they were quite big glasses. I don't know, but but that was when my children were small, and I was working quite a lot, and I was tired already in the morning. Even before getting to work, and after work, I needed to relax on the sofa. And I thought that this problem, because remember, we were recommended those 2 glasses of wine and it felt good. So I had no reason to expect anything else. So I would think that it was having small children that was stressful or my job that was stressful. But now it turns out it wasn't that. It was the alcohol that made me tired. And now that I drink maybe 3 times a year in special occasions, it's a party with a publisher and so on, that I choose some specific days in the year. Then suddenly I get this feeling back. Then I remember, oh, it was like this to wake up in the morning. And now I'm tired at 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. How can that be? Ah, this is how I used to feel every day, for all those years. So alcohol is maybe the worst energy thief you can think of. So anyone who wants to have a productive life and be able to perform at work or with your family and pursue your interests, alcohol is in the way. So although a lot of people say it takes out the fun of things and the joys of life and so on, but it's really when you get the physiological price of alcohol demonstrated on your wearable, it puts you off really. So when I see that glass of wine, I want it, but I can also see the effect of it, mentally the next day, and it just is not so tempting anymore, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and I think from what I hear from a lot of people is that okay, there's so much resistance around this around alcohol, right? Because as you say, we have been told that it's good for us to have a few glasses of wine. It's acceptable, everybody does it, can it really be that dangerous? And we know that alcohol it doesn't only it's not only stress for your system, it's not only the fact that you wake up feeling tired the next day. There are a lot of other side effects when it comes to alcohol that we don't speak about. And I think people are, maybe because it's such a big part of our culture, and you're saying the social part, that we have to, be allowed to have some fun, etc. So I find that there's a lot of resistance around changing the view on alcohol. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And in the beginning, when I was not drinking, I was looked upon with suspicion. Why don't you drink? What's with you? And a lot of women are, people would ask, are you pregnant? And so on. It used to be like that. Now I think it's more common, particularly in the young generation. So I think everything is changing, and as you say, it's not only the stress levels that is a problem, but it's carcinogenic. It promotes at least seven, I would suspect more, but they know now that 7 different kinds of cancers, with from the colon cancer and particularly breast cancer for women, alcohol will raise the risk of contracting those diseases quite a lot. I think the numbers for women is more severe. That a number I saw just yesterday was that the risk of getting cancer and disease is twice as big for women compared to men when it comes to alcohol consumption. I think we can see that in the stress levels as well, because quite often people contact me and say that or the women say, most who contact me are women, probably 80%. And they say that I cannot tolerate even one glass of wine, but my husband can take two or three and it's okay. So it seems that we can also see in the stress levels that it will affect women more than men.
And do you have any thoughts about why it's like that?
I don't know. And it's like we're all now pioneers into a new continent,
Mm.
because suddenly, we as doctors are used to just having some taking the blood pressure when the patient is there, taking the blood sugar when it's there. But now suddenly millions of people have devices that they can see their system in real time. So we're discovering so much that is not really known to
Mm.
people.
Mm.
So we are kind of the first pioneers going into a new continent, and that continent is us, our own function, our own immune system, and our own nervous system. So I'm not sure if that is at all known, this effect on the stress levels, but it's a
Mm.
clear difference. So
Wow.
although I can hear that a lot of men are seriously affected in their stress levels by alcohol, is much more common among women. And I haven't heard of anyone starting to track their heart rate variability that is not cut down on alcohol. Not necessarily totally, but they have reduced the amount of kind of unnecessary glasses of alcohol, and kept the weddings or the night out with the guys, and some of those. But it's also important that they are then aware of the after effects. I
Mm.
just spoke to one lady yesterday, and she had been at a party, and it took 5 days to get back.
Wow.
And that is also what the Whoop data demonstrates, that it will take 5 days until you're back at the same recovery that you were before you were drinking alcohol.
Wow.
So at least when you're talking, 4 or 5 glasses of alcohol, it will take 5 days to recover from it. And once you know that price, it's then you can take an informed choice that, okay, I want to have this party and I know I'll be reduced for 5 days. I will still do it, and that's okay. And probably once in a while, it doesn't really matter so much. um, there is no amount of alcohol that will enhance your health, but it may not damage it so much that I cannot, at least I don't feel I can say that, okay, if you go out 5, 10 times a year and drink, I don't think we're able to say that this is really harmful for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's so interesting. So, okay, so two things come to mind. So, first of all, I know there have been studies, I think maybe from France, where they've seen that. Okay, so I don't really remember the studies, and I think the takeaway was that going out and drinking with your friends had a positive effect, and that is because of the being together and the being social, because we know that that is really really important for our health, right, to have connection and be with other people. So I think, like you say that it's not about being either for or against. It's about looking at the total picture. What do you want your life to be like, and what can you do in order to achieve that life? And yeah, it's the fact that you're tired for 5 days. I mean, who has 5 days to spend being tired,
Yeah, yeah.
so
I don't. Yeah,
yeah, so that's one thing. And the other thing is, okay, it's carcinogenic. It is definitely not an anti-aging tool at all. It has the
mm,
opposite effect. So if we want to live longer and be healthier, it's a natural choice to drop alcohol. And still, it again, it's the total picture. There's a wedding or there's the night out with the boys, like you say, and maybe the rewards outweigh the negative effects of just that one time. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, that's right. That's right. Because the reason why we were recommended those 2 and 1 glasses of wine were that we could see that the ones who had those glasses lived longer.
Mm,
And then we thought that it was the alcohol. But then we didn't know the toxic effect of being lonely.
yeah.
So it's proven that being lonely is as dangerous for your health as smoking.
Yeah.
And of course, the ones who were drinking more were usually doing it in company with others. And this effect was not taken into account. So it was kind of a confounding factor in this budget, so to speak. So now that they can isolate that and show that the pure effect of alcohol, they see that there's no amount of alcohol that is good for your health.
Mm.
So we're learning all the time. So the landscape of health looks very different from when I studied medicine 25 years ago in the last millennium, than in the 1900s. And it really feels like that because there's been a huge change towards preventative health and away from waiting until you get sick and then do something that we doctors are trained in that sense of medicine. So now we have these tools that makes it able for you to take charge of your health. So it's really a huge shift in the healthcare system. It's a shift from waiting until you get sick and then the doctors and other practitioners and the healthcare system takes care of you and makes the decisions, uh, and towards preventative and that you have control.
Mm.
So you have to invest every day some effort into eating well, sleeping, exercising, regulating food, alcohol, fasting, and all these things. You have to do some effort, but you will be rewarded by reducing the chances of getting a disease in which the treatment often you have no control. So there's no easy way. You have to do something. And I, of course, live from the people who don't do that. So if you, I would often want people, I should have a GoPro camera at work, maybe with blurring out the faces and so on. But the physiological state of the patients that come to me is not good.
No.
They're not exercising. They're severely overweight. They're not sleeping well. They have a lot of conditions that further will deteriorate their conditions. Start taking medicines that will stress them. A lot of medications is actually giving stress, particularly anticholinergic drugs, and we have a lot of them. They can create dementia, increase the risk of getting cancer, and so much. So the more you can take charge of your health and live in the way that I describe in the Pulse because the Pulse is not only an education in how to use wearables, it's the compilation of the best advice regarding lifestyle strategies that I know. So what you find in the Pulse is what you find in most health related books now, about the best advice. So I try to make it really easy understandable, and on each subject, I also point to a book from an expert that can tell you more. And that is kind of my work as a general practitioner, that either I know what to do or I can refer you to somebody who knows it better. So that's kind of a natural way for me to do something, that I can teach you about fasting, for example, but I also want to point you to the world expert on fasting so you can go directly to the source and not just have my summary of it. If this is a field that you have particular interest in.
Mm.
So, and also I will give tips to the podcast because podcast is such a important way to get information. When I studied medicine, or when people study medicine, of course, you go to lectures, and the quality of the lectures in the University of Oslo was constricted by the capacity of the professors at the time.
Yeah.
Now you can go to the best podcast and you get a lecture from the world expert trained in delivering their message in an understandable and useful way. And so you can have, like me, I have a 1 hour commuting time when I go to work. So I will listen to a 1 hour podcast, both way, also return. So I may have 10, 15 hours of lectures every week, from the
Mm.
top experts in the field, compared to the knowledge we were able to get in the University of Oslo 25 years ago. It's a massive difference. and it's also available to most people. So what I find almost provocative is that the doctors, they don't pay attention. They don't listen to the podcast, at least not my generation. And most people that I meet are more educated in this than my fellow colleagues. Uh, so it's both good and bad, but it also makes it possible for you as an individual with no education in health to get better knowledge in a relatively short time than your doctor has.
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. And I think, there is a huge shift coming from, just repairing the problem after it happened to preventing it. And the last place where we see that shift is within the health sector, right?
The slowest ones, yeah.
It's the slowest ones, which is natural because, it takes time to update the whole system and the education and everything. And it is very human to be protective of what you know as the only truth, and everything which is new is dangerous for our brain. We know that. So it is normal and natural that, within the health sector, that, people are maybe rejecting all this new knowledge. But at some point, the evidence will be overwhelming. So at some point, there will have to be a real change. And I'm curious, like when you talk to other doctors, or also when you're speaking to your patients, is there resistance there, or like how do people meet you? Are you like, do they buy everything you talk about, or is there like a resistance to it, Torkil? I'm curious.
I think it's divided. Once you start educating yourself on this, you will quickly shift.
Yeah.
Once you start, for example, understanding the power of the watches and rings, there's no way back. Then you understand it immediately. So you're either ignorant and you don't want to know, or don't have the time to learn about these things, and you will keep on doing what you learned in school, 25, 30, 40 years ago. Once you start educating yourself and listening to the updated information on health and what creates health, then it's a quick shift. So there's kind of no one in between. There's
Mhm.
no one that halfway just trusts the ways we have done things before and halfway trust what's new. It's either or. It's kind of an awakening thing for many people. Oh, this is how it works, like it was for me. And I can understand them, because I cannot criticize them so much, because I was a doctor for 20 years and before I realized this. And a lot of circumstances led me to it, including my father's death. And if he hadn't died and I was more conscious about my own health, I would probably be still like them. I was I was focused on living an adventurous life,
Mm.
traveling around the world, sailing around the world with my family. I did not really have focus on my own health. I didn't care so much about that. I didn't have the understanding that it mattered very much. I had an understanding that if I did all the right things, maybe I would live 2, 3, 4 years longer. But it would take me 2, 3, 4 years to do that, with the amount of exercise, the amount of extra sleep, the amount of extra attention to your diet and so on. So why bother? But now we know that we're talking decades. We're talking 2.5 decades of extra life, extra healthy life, with a health span. So it's totally different. And it was some lucky or unlucky circumstances that led me into this, and primarily an interest for me to live longer. And once I found out so much about that, it felt like an obligation to also be able to tell that to other people. So now I'm an author of like 4 bestsellers, probably next week, of 4 bestsellers. And I was not an author. 10 years ago, if you told me that you're going to write 4 bestsellers and be translated into 8 languages, I would, are you kidding me? Is there a camera somewhere? So, because I was the last person in the world that you would think would be doing that, because of several reasons. I've done everything wrong in my books. I've done every lifestyle strategy I've done wrong. Smoking, using nicotine also in other ways, not caring about diet, weighing 40 pounds more than I do today, not exercising, not bothering about my sleep. So then everything I've done wrong. So but it's possible to change. But anyway, I can understand why they haven't updated their knowledge, because you're busy working with all these sick people, and the education that I have had to do has been on my leisure time, on my spare time.
Yeah.
And not everybody has the time or motivation to do that work. I've studied the last 10 years probably compared to like three medical schools,
Wow.
I would say. I've read like 500 books, listening to podcasts 15 hours a week. What would that be in 50 weeks, every year? It's a lot. It's a lot of knowledge. So if you don't have the time or motivation to do that, you're still in the last century's medicine.
Yeah. And we know that people love being in the comfort zone, and whatever is new and whatever requires extra energy, we tend to stay away from it. And then we also know that it is when you develop, when you open your mind, when you learn new stuff, and when you push yourself, that's when you become really happy. And you can't really be happy when you stay within the comfort zone, and that is what our brains is doing its best job at, keeping us there. So it is natural that, as you say, the doctors, they're working long hours. It's a lot of work, and maybe most people just want to relax with a glass of wine after work instead of, learning those new things. And I think, you know, uh, as you said, you thought before that, okay, yeah, I can gain like 2, 3, 4 years extra if I change my lifestyle, but is it really worth it? Because it takes so much effort. And I think we also think that, okay, living longer means living longer with bad health, because we look upon, uh, being old now, it equals having bad health, right, in our society, because it's so normal that when we grow old we have all these health issues, and it doesn't have to be like that. And I think in society still we're just like, why do I want to live longer? Because I'm just going to be, frail and sick and all that stuff. And that's a thing we have to change. And also, I think it's so powerful what you're actually saying, that, yeah, you woke up every morning feeling tired. You got back home from work, you felt tired. And I think that so many people live their lives like that, and they're not aware of it because it becomes a habit. It's like this every day, and we don't see the difference until we start making a change. Exercising, or prioritizing sleep, or cutting out alcohol, and then, as you said yourself, suddenly you felt the difference, and it was a huge difference, and that is motivating. And yeah, you can use the wearables, and you can track your stress levels, and you can read everything about the negative effects of alcohol. And I think when you actually feel it, you wake up the next morning, you haven't been drinking like you used to, and you feel all the energy, and just like feeling healthy and strong from within. It's the best feeling, isn't it?
I know. Yeah. So now I'm addicted to feeling refreshed in the morning, rather than alcohol. I don't think I was addicted to alcohol. It wasn't really hard to quit, but still, it was a habit that
Yeah.
was probably deeply ingrained in my system. So, and and so, what is interesting now is that when I really want to relax, I I work in the ER. That is the most relaxing things. My Garmin curves are totally in the parasympathetic mode, regardless of how busy it is. It can be really busy. Like not so long ago, I had like 65 patients in a 15-hour shift, and I was in the blue parasympathetic zone the whole day.
Wow.
And earlier, then I would think that this is hard. Being at the ER is stressful work, and your brain is a kind of a prediction factory. And when you think that it is like that, this is what you will perceive as well, and think is real. And it took my watch to understand that I can do a lot of shifts in the ER that will cost me time, but not energy.
Mm.
I can come back from an ER shift feeling as more, relaxed than when I went, in the morning. So it's important to have this real uh, reality check of how things actually work, and you can use that to adjust what you're doing. The argument that you hear all the time is, why live 10 years longer? Is only the years at the nursing home. Why would you want more of that? But that is not so. If you live a healthy life, then the chances of you having a vital life into your late 80s is very high. And it's only the last 2 3 years that your body more or less collapses.
Mm.
No matter how healthy you can live, you're not going to be 110, or some will, but that's like a lottery ticket amount of people. So, but what you can do is that to increase your chances of reaching 92, 93, 95, and getting crossing the 90-year barrier still with a productive life, or you can have experiences, you have good enough health so you can be in the world. So it's not those years at the nursing home being sick. That happens when you get these lifestyle diseases and you start medications already from your 50s, and you live a reduced life, with several conditions that will constrict your, I would say, way to live your life for many years. So that is my experience. So it's the opposite of what people think and what I used to think as well.
Yeah. Oh, and when I say that my goal is to surf until I'm 100, do you think I'm way too optimistic?
Oh, you can do it. You can do it. And probably, hopefully, we will also be aided by new technology, by new findings, by research, by artificial intelligence. So what we see with these wearables is just the beginning, because when you can use these numbers from our system and then probably add, like blood sugar, some other factors, you can add your DNA results, you can add your blood sample tests from different laboratory tests, and combined with artificial intelligence and information on how you're living your life, this will improve. I'm very, very sure. I know there's lots of money, lots of research into this. And this will, maybe it will help you get those 5 10 extra years out of squeeze it out of the possibilities. So that's what we can hope for, I think. But so far we need to do the work on our own. But these wearables tracking your heart rate variability is a great is the greatest aid for that. So it's already there. The future is already here.
Mm.
And what's interesting about the future, or what these instruments show us, is that they point backwards in time. So if you can live more like the circumstances throughout evolutionary times, you will be more healthy. Sleep when it's dark, eat natural food, move, rest when you're not, when you can, drink water, stay away from a lot of toxic agents, that we surround ourselves with. You will live healthier. It will be shown in the heart rate.
Yeah, oh, that's interesting. And it just something pops into my mind. I had, so for a very long time, I've had like super great HRV and felt so good and felt really healthy and lots of energy. And, my tendency when everything is fine is like, I can push a little bit harder. And then I keep track on my watch and my HRV, everything is good. And I'm like, I can push a little bit harder. And for a long time, like this fall when I was living in California, I was going out surfing every day and just like really busy and maybe drinking a little bit too much coffee. And my garment still gave me good measurements until one day it didn't anymore. So I thought like I thought I had too high stress levels, and the watch didn't really tell me that until one day the HRV was suddenly really unbalanced.
Mm.
which was interesting because I was keeping track every day. I'm like, I'm still have a balance. There's enough balance here. I have, enough rest. And one day it just, yeah, it was out of balance.
Mm.
And it lasted for a long time.
It lasted.
Hmm.
How long did it last?
A month. Yeah.
A month.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You could feel it also,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Totally.
yeah. Yeah.
And I completely know what happened. So okay, surfing for me was really stressful because it's scary to be in the ocean. So I was getting up early in the morning, drinking coffee. Yeah, I know it's a bad idea, and I did it because my health was so good. So I was like, okay, my body can deal with it now because everything is good. And then wake up early, drink coffee, go in the water, which is there was a lot of fear I was tackling in the water. After I finished that, it was work, it was kids, like a lot of stuff all through the day. Yeah, I slept well. I had the evenings off still. There was like I just yanked up my nervous system in the morning and went hard. And 3 months of surfing every morning, which is the most or used to be the most scary thing I knew about. Like
Yeah.
of course, it has an impact on the system. And, I was tracking my health, everything. And it was good until one day it wasn't. And then after that day, it took me a month to regain
Take it back.
everything.
Yeah. 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 So it's probably easy, and probably you're saying it was stable. If you have had a better balance, with rest days in between,
Hmm.
you would have an upward curve.
Yeah.
So being flat, even you coming to California with the sunshine, which will improve it, you were putting a load on your system that camouflaged the
Uh,
raise in heart rate variability that you would otherwise have seen,
yeah.
you know, and then it went down. So we have to. I think all of us in the modern world needs to think a bit like athletes, to have as much focus on recovery as on the exercise. It's only when you do the exercise, if you're not good at recovery, you don't get the payback from the effort.
Hmm.
So probably you should have put some more days off in there, and you would have probably seen a HRV going up and not just staying in the balance zone there. Yeah.
That is so interesting. And it's true, I was outdoors every day in the sun, walking barefoot under the sand, being in the water, lots of stuff which is really good for the health. And yeah, like if you exercise every day and it is straining, and if that exercise, in addition to just being exercise, it is super scary and stressful, being
Hmm.
in the
Yeah.
water, big waves. And, there's a lot of, I was tackling fears. And, yeah, now after I spent almost 4 months there, like I'm in a totally different place when I go out surfing. And I
Mm.
had to work through a lot of things to get there.
Mm.
So it was like extra load on my system. And then, I don't have those waves here in Norway. So I was there. I knew I had
Yeah.
these months, though these weeks to really take my surfing to a new level. And I'm like, I'm sure there will be some days where I can't surf. So I'll just push hard whenever there are waves. And there were waves almost every day.
Yeah, yeah, and you learned, you
Yeah.
could see the results. So it's often a matter also of pushing yourself like that and see that, okay, there was a limit. This happened when I did that. Okay, next time I'll put in some days off, and you'll be fine. So it's this conversation with your own system, because if you hadn't had the watch, you wouldn't really know what's going on. You wouldn't see these answers so clearly
Mm,
in your system.
mm.
And imagine if you had been drinking alcohol, every day. There's wine country probably. So you would have that extra load as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was so interesting, and thanks for making that clearer to me. Because I was like, I couldn't understand how it could go from being fine then not being fine, and That's probably a very good explanation. And yeah, I eat healthy, I sleep well, I do all the right things, meditate every morning, and there's no alcohol. And just like you, Torkil, I used to drink a lot of alcohol when I was younger. And coming back to what you said about women, and I've always, or not always, that's not right, when I was in my 20s I could party all night and I didn't really feel it. And I think, we get used to it also. And then gradually I started to notice that I felt really bad for a long time after drinking. And I have always been interested in reaching my goals. I love waking up in the morning, having energy. And that has, for many years, it outweighed the need to go out partying, because I couldn't deal with the feeling of being hungover. I really, really didn't like it. And I know compared to my husband also, he can drink more than me without feeling it. And yeah, I guess, in general, I don't know, there are probably many explanations to this. And we know that, men, they have more muscles than women, and they're stronger in many ways. So I guess their system just gets rid of the alcohol quicker also. I mean, that could be one explanation, and we really don't know.
And I think that women has a more vulnerable physiology in general,
Yeah.
and as a general practitioner, 2/3 of the patients are women. So say
Mm.
that I've had more than 100,000 consultations over the years. And so if I split that, it would be 66,000 women and 33,000 men. So I've seen twice as many women as I've seen men. So I
Mm.
think that there's something in the physiology in women that makes them more prone to getting into fatigue states, getting fibromyalgia, getting different kinds of anxiety, autoimmune diseases, and so on. So I think, and that is also probably why I think 85% of my followers on Instagram would be women.
Mm.
Men want to use these wearables to perform better,
Yeah.
to run faster, and so on. But women, they need them to stay healthy,
Yeah.
to stay free of symptoms. So they're much more involved in this. You would think my publisher thought before they released the Pulse Cure that this was for guys, with their interest in technology and buttons and all the technique and stuff. But I said, no, no, this is mainly a women's thing because their health is at stake.
Yeah.
For men, it's more that their performance is at stake.
Yeah.
It's of course not as clear cut, but the tendency will be towards that.
Wow, that's interesting. And that does really, yeah, I see that in my followers and people who come to me, and also read stuff about this. And we don't know why women are more vulnerable to all this. And I agree with you that I can see men who've been through a lot of stuff, traumatic upbringings and everything, and women being through a lot of stuff. And the women are normally the ones who are hit harder by all the stress in life. And there's probably several explanations to it,
Several
and which
explanations.
has
There's
to
some
do.
explanations is that women tend to be more worried.
Yeah.
They tend to take upon emotional stress on themselves to a larger degree. They of course have this menstrual cycle then that will fluctuate and be can be a problem. Men are more carefree, take more risks. That is how we are constructed from evolution. If we had switched the roles, because men throughout history, 1/3 to half of men have been killed in fights,
Mm.
either fights against other tribes or hunting or fighting over women or land or valuables. So they have to be quite fearless. You would want your leader in your tribe to be fearless and tough. And if if the leader was worried, and taking upon the emotional, oh, sorry, I killed you, or did I hurt you, it was not the way that the men throughout history, and even before we were men, even or you Homo sapiens, we're talking 5 million years ago. We are still, our brains and physiology is still kind of 5 million years old. And if the women, on the other hand, would be as carefree and taking chances and not having the same emotional intelligence, what would happen to the children and the tribe in the camp? It would be hopeless.
Yeah.
This tribe would not survive. Maybe that it has been tendencies in some tribe, 300,000 years ago, but that tribe would succumb to anything from another tribe that had another way of being.
So true and so interesting. And yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying. And the implications of that, Torkil, is that we have to help the women, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and also curious. So, did you used to recommend your patients before you knew about alcohol? Did you used to recommend them alcohol, or how was your relationship with that?
I don't think we talked much about it.
No.
I think it was not, unless they had some problems, it wasn't really seen as something that affected it. I may have recommended it, absolutely. If the subject came up, I would have said that the recommendations from the health authorities is 2 glasses of wine and,
Mm,
and one for women, that this is good for you.
mm.
If they asked, you know, that could have been that they asked, I drink, is that a problem? And then I would say, no, it's not a problem. It's healthy.
Yeah. And how is it like in these days? Like when a patient comes to you, and I imagine there are a lot of things you can start to talk about. Like, do you talk about alcohol at all? Do you talk about lifestyle changes? Where do you start when someone comes in with a lot of issues?
Yeah, I would, at times I would talk about it. The way I work, I'm a freelance doctor. So I would go into a certain county, for example, in Norway, and be at work 24/7 or 24/14, either 1 week or 2 weeks at the office in the daytime and on call all other times. So I will come into somebody else's system. So I'm not going in there and changing everything.
Mm,
So I do it even more to observe, to be at the perfect vantage point to see how what makes you healthy and what makes you sick. But sometimes, and most of the patients, they don't want any responsibility for their disease.
yeah.
They want that the disease is contracted either by bad luck or genetics, none of their responsibility. And they can be very provoked, because I used to give advice, quite early in my career, and think that, okay, they're coming to get advice, as I would, if I was sick. uh, and they wouldn't take it. They would be, could be really angry. Are you saying that I have something to do with this? They would say, I felt bad coming in, but now I feel a lot worse. um, so there I just do the work that I'm expected to do, to give them the pill that they're seeking, or the referral to the specialist that they're looking for, or the radiological examination or lab work or whatever.
Mm,
But I observe, I see what happens. And once in a while I sense that one person is in the position to make some lifestyle changes, more and more, because more patients are aware of this. And then I discuss it, yeah. But normally I stay away from it and just do what is expected of me, and then rather use the information and the frustration and channel it into books and podcasts like this, and other kind of work and lectures. I do, lectures. I've been on 200 podcasts, 100 Norwegian ones and 100 international or English speaking ones. So I try to get the information from my work, and give it to people, through words and speech.
probably a better way to spend your energy because we can't do all the fights, and being very deliberate on where you spend your energy is what is going to give you the best results in the end. And this is what it's all about. And we can either look at those wearables and measuring your stress levels, as many people still reject it and say, no, this is going to be so stressful to monitor my stress levels and everything.
Mm.
And in the end, it is a tool. And why do we want to use the tool? Well, I think there are two main reasons. First of all, you can live longer and be healthier. And second of all, it really comes down to the life you want to live. So, how do you want your life to be? And I'm sure, Torkil, that everybody really wants to be happy and have energy and achieve their goals, right? And I don't think that that is possible if you don't take care of your health. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. We have the control over our health. We can be the CEOs of our own health, so to speak. And it's important also to stress that the information, the pulse gear, you don't need a wearable. My editor was very particular about that. You should be able to get the most out of the book even without any wearable. Just the information on what makes a healthy life, and you can use the knowledge that the ones that have used the wearables have learned, and then just do what they have done. Be a free rider, so to speak. And of course, there are different wearables. You have the Whoop band that does not have any screen, that you may look at in the morning and look at in the evening, and it's not so invading or intrusive in your life. If you want to micromanage your stress levels, then the only option is the Garmin watch, I would say, so far. Unfortunately, I would love to have even more opportunities or options, but if you want to see hour to hour, minute to minute, what is your stress levels, then it's the Garmin. You can push a button, and you can see the stress level in the moment, so that you will be able to downregulate, for example, by breathing or cold exposure or whatever, to mitigate the stress. When you see it as a speedometer on your dashboard, you can see it very clearly. And you have also the rings, of course. Many people don't like to have something on their wrists, or particularly at night. Then you have the Aura rings. You have the Samsung Galaxy ring. That is also not so intrusive. You get a readiness score in the morning. You'll get a score on your sleep. And it all becomes, many people are scared that it will be stressful to pay attention to these things. And of course, in the first weeks, it could be very strange and unfamiliar. But most people will adjust to it and deal with it just as you do in your car and your dashboard. You look at your dashboard. What is your speed? How much gas is left? What's the outside temperature? You see the GPS. Okay, I have 1 hour to go. And so on. I will turn left in the next corner. And this is the way that you will use these wearables as well for most people. So if you can handle having this information in your car while you're driving, you can handle this. And this is, of course, much more valuable and important information than the information that you have in your car. So there's different options that you can have to be able to track your system that will suit different people.
Wow, this has been so interesting, Torkil, and I'll make sure to put the link to your book in the description below and recommend everyone going out and getting it because, in the end, you can take control over your life and really be able to live the life that you want to live when you have the knowledge, when you can measure it, when you know what to do in order to have a body and a mind that functions at its best.
Yeah, and I would also say it's also an Audible and an ebook. So you don't have to wait for it to be mailed to you. So it's also available in other formats.
Fantastic. I'll put the link below and thank you so much for taking your time today.
Thank you, Anniken. Always great to talk to you.